What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with something a little bit different, and this comes in the form of Paladins. So right now we are looking through this rather massive list of Paladins characters, but I wanted to jump in and explain a little bit about the game for any of you guys who are new to it. And yes, I am playing for the first time right now, so I'm a pretty big noob, but Hi-Res very kindly invited me to come and check the game out, so I'm going to jump in and give you a few tips because Paladins is free to play, and so you guys are invited as well. If you do like the look of the game, then you can play Paladins right now on PC, Xbox One, PS4, and Switch. So if you want to play Paladins right now, you can check out the link to download the game in the description box below. Either way, we're going to jump in and talk about a few lessons that I learned going into Paladins. So you've probably noticed, but Paladins is a hero shooter game, and this one in particular has just loads of characters. I mean, look at them. That is a lot of variety right there, and yeah, I would imagine that also means quite a lot of balancing for the developers, but nonetheless, there really is a lot to learn about the gameplay over time. But jumping in initially, we get to try out Victor, so he's kind of the standard soldier guy that you start out with. And he's a pretty strong character, or at least you feel pretty strong with this character when you first start out, because Paladins is definitely the kind of game where the skill ceiling keeps climbing, but for now we're rocking Victor's AR LMG, which is a pretty high damage assault rifle, and it's really nasty with iron sights as well, because you get some monster range on this thing, but of course we are playing a character shooter, so weapons and abilities are talents tied to the character. And then of course you get other abilities, so we can sprint with Victor, which isn't actually something you can do with all of the characters. For instance, if you're playing Lex, then you get combat slide instead, and this actually lets you slide forwards and fire your weapons all at once, which is pretty awesome. In this gameplay though, we do have Frag Grenade with Victor, which is really useful for splash damaging groups of opponents, throwing around corners or even just ruining someone's day if you think a gunfight might not be going your way. But then of course, last but certainly not least in this case, we also get our ultimate ability. At the minute we're using Barrage, where you can call down artillery barrages on enemies. I've got to say I'm no pro with any of these ultimates by any means, but this one's pretty strong, but you do get other things like the Law, so that's another ability that you can use on Lex, where you charge up an area damage effect which destroys the shields of any target in its wake, but also kills targets below 65% health, and then deals 600 damage to any other nearby enemies, so that's pretty nasty stuff. In terms of the game mode that you're seeing in the background right here though, we are playing Siege, and so we're trying to push the payload, which is basically a moving objective if you've never played a mode like this, where we basically need to group up at the payload in order to control the objective and actually push it forward. Quick tip! Paladins is one of those games where you definitely always want to play the objective, which honestly, yeah, some of you guys who watch a lot of my gameplay will know, I'm often one of those guys who ends up forgetting and looking for kills instead, so just remember that the objectives are definitely very important in the objective modes in Paladins. We had a pretty good push right there in the second round. And also you can see how strong this assault rifle actually is. I'm just kind of on top of the hill, keeping these guys off the objective as we slowly push it forward. We're playing PC by the way here as well, so sorry about my slight potato aim, but you can download the game on Xbox One, PS4 and Switch, so bear that in mind. On the subject of that team play, you'll notice a lot of the enemy team in this game are kind of funneling out on their own, and our team shot is just so strong, so you really do need that coordination. And speaking of coordination, don't do what I did with the barrage and spam it, because each missile that actually drops is really strong, so you want to try and spread them out evenly over a few different targets. Especially when players are trying to hold objectives or group up, it can be pretty nasty. Nonetheless, I'm going to say that was a pretty decent streak right there, ending that push. Now there is another really cool character that I've been playing called Tiberius. And while I've only played a handful of characters so far, he probably is my favorite at the moment. I mean, he looks fairly awesome, but even more awesome are his abilities. So Tiberius gets bladed chakrams, and these things are kind of like giant throwing stars almost. They actually bounce off walls and floors, which is pretty insane because you can throw them behind cover, around corners, into hallways and things like that. It also seems like they have a pretty huge hitbox as well, which I guess kind of makes sense because they are literally physically massive, but with this character you can actually combine these with another talent called Combat Trance. So when you pop Combat Trance, you get a fairly significant boost to attack and movement speed for 4 seconds, and so the chakrams are really lethal when this is active, because you can throw them at an incredible rate, and obviously, a big tip with this bonus is to try and pop it either as you engage 1 or 2 targets, or even to improve your odds in a fight, because it makes using those chakrams much more forgiving for a few seconds if you miss, right? Tiberius does get a talent called Heavy Blade, and this does a lot of damage, so it cuts through enemy shields and even slows them. And it's really good when you double up the heavy blade and the chakram one after another for a really quick, clean kill. But you can actually adjust a lot of the talents or certain stats through the card loadout system. So this is essentially your customization on the character. Despite the fact that Paladins has fixed characters, it does mean that you can spec into certain things or gain additional stats. So in this game I was trying out Primal Haste, and this is a card in the loadout which gives you a health shield for 4 seconds after activating Combat Trance. So I compare that increase in movement speed and attack with more health, but then adding a second card, I can actually get a perk where I'm healing for 200 points every second when Combat Trance is active. So that's really useful in combat because you're buffing the amount of projectiles that you can actually throw, increasing your movement speed, and increasing both your health and regen at the same time. The card loadout actually consists of a total of 5 different cards, and there are a bunch of different ones for each character that you can pick from. But you can also attribute points to certain cards to increase the stat value of them. So as I increase the points on the Test of Strength card, it actually grants me more health points per second in return. You can also see that the card loadout needs to consist of 15 total points distributed across the perks, and so that does actually give you quite a bit of wiggle room with that customization. But otherwise in the cards in this gameplay, we're rocking a perk to increase health after activating Crouching Tiger. And this is a really cool kind of Crouching Tiger Leap that you can use as a mobility tool, because you can either use it aggressively, so you can hop over walls or over levels to get to targets or flank, or you can use it defensively to actually get out of spaces pretty quickly if you need to. On top of this, the card loadout that I've chosen is also reducing the cooldown of Combat Trance by 2 seconds every time an enemy is hit by Heavy Blade, so I'm getting that ability even quicker. And we've got a card which increases our maximum ammo, so I can actually carry a couple more chakrams here. That kind of explains the card loadout system, and there are different variations that you can set up, which obviously inside of the gameplay are going to help you against particular types of teams or particular characters that you're playing against and things like that. You can see in some of this gameplay that I'm having mixed success when it comes to the blade dance, so this is the special ability for Tiberius, which lets you flourish the heavy blade and use a striking attack, as well as a whirling blade kind of attack. This one is probably best used on 1 or 2 important or tanky targets, especially when vulnerable. And I think there's definitely a knack to timing a lot of these abilities, but a big shout, especially with this character and the cards that I'm using at the moment, but in general in the game, is that you do get that special ability up quite a bit. So be sure to use it often, of course being aware to try and time things to get those juicy plays. I really like how you can use Crouching Tiger for that big jump and then actually pop your blade dance at the same time. That can definitely really surprise players, but one of the other things I haven't mentioned here is that you may also notice that between rounds and at the start of matches, there's another interesting mechanic that allows you to buy perks on the fly with a kind of in-match currency. So you can choose defenses, for example, and this will increase your shields against area of effect damage. And then throughout the course of a match, you can buy extra tiers of that perk. So it's a pretty interesting way of rewarding play during the match, but also providing tweaks to characters and allowing us to be kind of reactionary depending on who we're actually playing. And so the sandbox side of Paladins is definitely really interesting, but of course outside of that, there are also a lot of different cosmetic upgrades and things you can pursue, daily quests and objectives to keep upgrading you through the game. And also, Paladins do something really neat in the form of their community battle pass, so it works like most battle passes. However, a lot of the contents inside of the pass are actually chosen or even created with the help of the community. So for instance, all of the skins that you see inside of the community pass were designed and selected by the community, which is really cool, and I think community created content in general is something that more games should do. Of course, Paladins is free to play, so the passes and things like that naturally do support the game, but nonetheless it's another pretty interesting element of Paladins. And so guys, I've had a bunch of fun jumping in to check Paladins out and get a bit of an introduction to the game. It's definitely something that I'll continue to play, but be sure to let us know in the comments section if any of you guys played Paladins before. I'm sure that some of you have, and I'm sure as well that there will probably be some absolute pros among you guys as well, so be sure to let us know your experience with the game. But if you haven't played it, then once again, you can check those links out down below to play Paladins free on Xbox One, PS4, PC and Switch. Also gotta say another thanks to Hi-Rez for inviting me and you guys to check out the game, but if you've enjoyed the video, a rating is also very much appreciated and it helps to support the channel. But otherwise, thanks a bunch for watching the video guys, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.
Overtime.